Welcome to Into the Unknown with Dwayne and Jason. Season 15, episode 450.
450?
Today, we take a close look at time slips. Those strange and headache-inducing experiences that make us question our sanity and the very strange nature of our current universe. I'm Dwayne Jones.
And I'm Jason Fitzgerald.
Time slips, eh, John?
You know, Einstein developed a theory about space. It was about time, too.
I'm glad you read my joke out loud.
Yeah. I've got jokes, too. I've got jokes.
Well, you're not the
So,
only one,
okay.
so it's about time we started. So
Sure.
Why don't you kick things off for us, John? Where are we
right.
going today?
So I have a feeling this is going to be a long one, a weighty one, but, you know, we figure it's the holidays and people have some time on their hands, and this is one that's worth a little pondering. So here we are on the cusp of the new year, 2026. Now, I'm not sure yet. Maybe you've decided what our release schedule is, but, you know, either we'll be right before or right after that new year. But it is a traditional time for people to pause and think about the promise of the future, the lessons of the past, and for us, the opportunities of time travel. You know, I used to be obsessed with time travel, but that's all in the past now.
Good one, good one.
That's a time travel joke. I told you I had some. Did you get it?
I didn't.
Was it funny? No.
They're good. They're dad jokes, of course. They're funny.
It must have been ahead of its time.
Oh, goodness. I'm watching these roll, and, you know, it's
okay.
like, I don't have time for this.
You have all the time in the world.
I don't have time for this.
We have all the time in the world.
Uh-oh, you're cutting out here.
Uh-oh.
You're cutting out here.
Okay.
You were genuinely scared.
I was, scared is one word. Okay, today we're going to tackle the subject of time slips, which is a little different than true time travel. This is one of those paranormal topics that can become especially convoluted and cause a headache if you try to make too much sense of it. And I don't mean make sense like debunking it.
We're not going to be debunking today, John?
Well, we might do a little debunking, but I'm not gonna dwell on the debunking. But we're gonna poke some holes we're gonna poke at it a little bit. I mean, in this case, that it can cause that headache trying to make sense if you're trying to approach it with anything more substantial than the logic you'd apply to a dream.
Okay.
But that does seem.
Yeah, no, I think this is what we do. And I must say, I did, scan ahead a little bit. I tried to be a little bit more prepared this time. And I have to say, looking at your script, I will have personal fun in watching you, John, grapple with this topic.
And I have been grappling with this for a while.
I know you have. And I am having just pure giddy delight inside my brain watching you deal with this. So this is really just it's a character study for me. So go right ahead, John.
Okay, good.
Go right ahead.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
So let's ask the important question of what is a time slip?
John, what is a time slip?
It is unintentional time travel.
Okay.
While there are many stories floating around paranormal and Fortean lore about time slips, none of them that I've encountered had willing participants with a specific desire to travel to a different time.
Okay.
There is also no apparent external mechanism, so no prodigal time machine in the H.G. Wells sense involved with time slip stories.
And people are not disembodied per se,
No.
right? They are embodied.
Yes, we're
as
not
they
talking
do
about
this. This is
astral
not astral travel.
No.
This is, again, non-intentional. This is
This is a physical experience.
Gotcha.
For them.
Okay.
So although some stories do mention an odd atmospheric occurrence, I didn't pull any of those, but there are stories about airplanes flying into an electrically charged fog, for instance. That's not a universal feature at all.
Right.
Often the participants simply drift into the past without noticing any kind of threshold. But don't worry, we'll come back to this in the theories section.
Okay,
towards the
because
end.
that's what you start these weird effects, and I won't start running down any rabbit holes, but
No.
you talk about these different effects.
There'll be plenty of time for rabbit holes later.
And it could be the case that that some folks are they did, but they're just not noticed
Right.
the effect.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
It depends on the individual.
That's a feature of the stories too, is that sometimes other people, listeners, readers, come back and say, well, what about that
Yeah,
point?
did you
That's the point of departure. Maybe.
Yeah, right.
And I think we're going to find in these stories that some of the things we've talked about this season, particularly the missing 411, gets an echo.
Right.
But there
Yeah,
are
it would have to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are some other things that do get echoes in this. So that's
Even Howard Lodge does, because
Yes.
that's one that I wanted
Yes.
to call to mind in the appropriate moment.
Okay, so some other features about the time slip stories. Time slips can occur to, and often do occur to, more than one person at a time. It is not uncommon for pairs of people to journey together. The people are typically in motion. They may be traveling in airplanes, cars, trains, or even simply walking. The people are also typically in unfamiliar surroundings. For example, making a road trip or visiting a foreign city, things of that nature. As we shall see, time slips often have features that overlap other paranormal phenomena, such as ghost encounters, alien abductions, or fairy visitors. Again, we'll circle back in the theories. But ultimately, the weight of the experiences settles on that anomaly involving time. One of the differences between time slips and ghostly encounters is that the traveler reports the experience to be far more lifelike than spectral. The traveler's sensation is that they are physically present in the past. Also, the entire environment has changed in a noticeable fashion. One does not merely see a wispy cloud of an apparition coming down the stairs, such as Howard Lodge, but rather a very solid-looking person trots down the stairs, pauses to pick up a stylish cane off the side table before heading out the heavy door that they open and close. When the traveler returns to the site, the cane is gone, the side table are gone, the scene has changed in a fashion that is noticeable, yet it is still recognizably the same scene.
Yeah, and this starts just to stop for a second on a ghostly encounter. It could be that a ghostly encounter is a spectrum of experience, right? You could experience something super mild, like an impression, which Jacqueline Emery says, in my mind's eye, I see this person, maybe even bordering on them, slipping into her reality, or something like you're pointing out here, whereas you've stepped in to a whole different scene. So it could be that we're just talking about, a whole spectrum.
Yeah, and to that point, I want to mention there are other time-related paranormal phenomena that aren't exactly the same, but are adjacent enough we should mention them, such as missing time, which is self-explanatory. And again, that sort of points back at the alien abduction experience. Or time dilation, in which the passage of time seems to expand or contract for the participants. I think that's a story for a different day, because I've got a personal story about that.
Yep, you do.
But what distinguishes time slips from these is that the traveler interacts with other people who are noticeably different and seem out of place and time to the traveler's perspective. Okay.
And didn't we talk about? And I listened to it recently, so that's why I'm thinking about it. But the categorization, where we say sometimes we bucket too precisely. But this is a case where we are bucketing precisely. So if you're longtime listeners, you may say, "Hey, but aren't you characterizing too closely?" And we say, "Yeah, in this case, maybe we are, but we want to distinguish before we would open up the edges of the bucket."
Yes, that's an interesting point, because I'm working on a future script. Obviously, production continues, where I make much the same point about characterization or categorization. How little do you want to do at a time? And it's definitely a spectrum. This is a case where we want to be very precise, because there's so much to talk about just the time slip.
Yeah. Well,
But-
and we also
but yeah.
have in the backlog, portals, stargates, and wormholes as a specific
So yes,
discussion, because those can
They're related.
They appear to be a spectrum of those.
Yeah, that appears
How
to
do
be
they
related.
happen? So that will be upcoming as well. But this is time slips.
Yeah,
and we're talking about certain parts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the point there is that while those are related phenomenon, they each need to be described as a separate thing before you can begin to consider them as a
Yeah, how
spectrum,
would
a
you-
whole, a related phenomena.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that does get because
Well,
because
and I
then
mention those because it's sort of a foreshadowing, because we do touch on them.
Yes.
Right. We
Yeah,
are
they
going to
get touched
use
on
some of
here,
those
but-
language, and I'm setting everybody up, because I think our listeners are going to have some familiarity with this. But again, we just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing by the
diligence.
material. Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so time slips are popular tropes in fiction, and I do want to mention this because the fictional time slips are slightly different from the stories from reality. Famously, time slips enter American literature with Mark Twain's A Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court. Although some people put the even earlier Washington Irving story, perhaps you've heard of this, Rip Van Winkle, into the same category.
Yeah.
Many people, of course, today are familiar with the Diana Gabaldon Outlander novels and TV show, in which the protagonist finds herself traveling between the mid-20th century UK and colonies and 18th century Scotland. The other thing I bumped into quite by accident, which really messed up my research, there's also Octavia Butler's novel Kindred, in which the protagonist similarly travels between 1976 and an 1830s plantation on the eastern shore of Maryland. The principal difference between the fictional versions of time slips and actual reported cases of time slips is that in fiction, the characters live out significant portions of their lives in the past and form lasting relationships with the people they meet. In reported time slips, it is a single incident in the past, very fleeting. Although it may last a significant length of time for the person, it's rarely more than a day. And while the time traveler may interact with others, the encounters seem very transactional.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
a wave, an acknowledgement,
Yeah.
a purchase, those kinds of things.
Yeah. And I'm surprised you didn't mention C.S. Lewis.
That's because I didn't read as much C.S. Lewis in
Oh, is that right? Okay. But you've read the.
What were you
you've-
thinking?
you've-
What were you thinking? Because it's not coming to
You
mind.
read
readily.
Kindred and the love
I did,
story.
I did not.
Outlander.
I did not read Kindred actually, but
I'm
when
just
I went
teasing you.
yeah.
No. C.S. Lewis, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is
Is it a time
is the
slip?
same thing? Yeah,
Well, it's definitely a.
it is absolutely.
portal.
They go through the wardrobe,
Right.
and they spend years.
Oh, sure.
You know,
There is
when
a
they
time
first
function to that.
arrive, or I mean, there's
Yes.
a point in time where they're children. When they get there, they rise into
To
royalty.
adulthood,
They become
right,
kings and
right.
queens, and then
When they go back,
they're
kids again.
hunting, and they go back through past the lamppost and pop out, and they're their old selves again, back in 1940s
Right.
UK.
I had forgotten
So it's
that.
a
But you're right.
massive time slip. Yeah.
Yeah, that is one I did read. That's one I've experienced through the various animated
Yeah.
series. And
Yeah. I
movies
mean, there's
and
many
whatnot,
others.
But yeah, I didn't. That didn't pop to mind. But that's because I wouldn't call that a time slip. But there is a function of time involved in that when you and that's a definitional thing. You could certainly throw
It's
it into
just
the
a
same.
long time slip
Yeah, you can throw it into the same category
because they came back as themselves.
Yeah.
And having only left a few moments ago.
right.
Which is a little different. But anyway,
Okay.
but I think the point there also is that, that art is mimicking the fiction, or excuse me, that art is, mirroring the reality that people live.
Right.
Later on, I'll point out some stories that I found just to have a little bit of color behind what I mentioned. And, these are fairly common occurrences.
Yeah.
As I come to realize, and it was just
right.
not like one or two individuals, but there's lots of folks that experience these, and some are very minor, all the way up to very impactful. So
Yeah. Sure. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
So and like I said, Kindred threw off my research because initially I was looking around, given our sort of mandate at this with the show.
Yeah.
I looked around for a Maryland time slip story on which to ground what this is, essentially a survey of time slips. Unfortunately, nothing local appeared in any of the books I referenced, and when I Googled Maryland time slip story, everything came up Kindred. So,
Well, yeah.
like I said, I didn't read it, but I feel like I've summarized it in my head, and I'm not sure I want to read
I
it
guess
now.
they placed it on the 1830s plantation on the Eastern Shore. It was probably, was it by any chance Sotterley Mansion? Does that ring a bell?
I
That's
don't
an
recall
old,
seeing. I don't recall seeing an actual place mentioned, but plenty of other unpleasantness was mentioned. I think I got the point of the book. It was it's brutal. Anyway, I did find a famous story that's still close, if not immediately local. It will tie into another episode. More themes popping up. I mentioned that some time slips stories can share features with other paranormal phenomena. So let's visit Gettysburg College's Pennsylvania Hall, which was standing for the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. So we've got another echo from an episode this season. Pennsylvania Hall was pressed into duty as a hospital for the soldiers from both sides, changing hands as the battle lines shifted. The story that I found, it's interesting that I had it set in time some 50 or 60 years after the battle, so early 20th century, and two female college administrators entered a Pennsylvania Hall elevator and were whisked to the basement. And when the doors opened, they looked out upon a grisly surgery from the battle. A surgeon noticed them and gestured for the women to come help. But that's when the elevator doors closed. So is this a ghost story or a time slip? Internet accounts suggest that this same scene has been encountered by others over the years since. But I do have to question, because I've seen the story in several places now as I researched the episode, and they all have different times. So has it happened multiple times, or has it happened just the once? And it gets reported as, well, this happened a few years ago.
Is it the same experience that they're seeing the battle, the injured soldiers?
And curiously, none of the accounts I found said it was clearly a Union surgery or a Confederate surgery. It's always, I clearly see it's a Civil War surgery. The amputations are happening. People are running around. It's bloody. It's grisly. It's all the things you would expect. But they don't set one side or the other. It's interesting.
Yeah,
It's an interesting
I would
story.
even say that doesn't surprise me in the sense that, once it turns into surgery, I would imagine it wasn't like the Union soldiers would just turn away a Confederate. I mean, at that point, it's like, look, I don't know. I mean, slaughter them on the battlefield, but let's bring them back to health while we're in the surgery. I don't know.
There were
Anyway.
cases of that, yes.
Yeah.
I should note, I do have a friend who visited Gettysburg College years ago because he was looking in on his then girlfriend, now wife, and he actually tried to have this exact same experience. He was in Pennsylvania Hall, got on the elevator, nothing happened. But remember, time slips seem to happen when the traveler's not expecting anything unusual to happen.
Well, and what argument that I might come up with is that, I don't know, once we the collective we as humankind, maybe start to understand this a little better, maybe it's something that is a little more predictable if that, there's a pressure event, and then there's a coincidence of a coronal mass ejection, or whatever, environmental circumstances make it happen more so than others. Or some timing within the earth that we're not familiar with, some periodic energy surges, which apparently is a thing as well at ancient sites like, where some of these menhirs are on the UK, the measurable energetic differences. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That these are actually, they well up and then they release energy on a, I can just call it a schedule. Or on a pattern, a periodicity. Anyway, very interesting.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that I actually knew somebody who had tried to not force
I think that's
this
great.
to happen, but experimented.
I think that's great, and I'm kind of poking at the idea that I am not sure when I want to introduce it, but it's just sort of a ghost hunter 2.0 sort of approach where. instead of just, hey, we're going to investigate, great, keep investigating. But hey, write down the time of day, the atmospheric conditions, anything that you can get as a data point. So that if you get some experience, maybe we can start making correlations to what was standard across all of these investigations. Anyway, good stuff.
Yeah, let's move on, because there is a gold standard time slip story which every researcher must contend with.
Yeah, I did. I did read this ahead of time.
And was it familiar to you?
No, I didn't read your script. I read it on another site so that I would sort of have their version of it.
Oh, good. Because there are some multiple versions floating around, and I tried to stick pretty much to the bare bones in here. So let's tell the story.
Yeah.
In 1911, two women.
We've already changed names. Early in the episode.
Dwayne.
Yeah. Well, Jason, let's continue.
Two women, Charlotte Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, both professional educators, published a book titled simply An Adventure, in which they described how during their 1901 trip to the Palace of Versailles, they took a wrong turn on the grounds. What they encountered walking towards the outlying chateau of, and I'm going to butcher this because everybody, including my wife, especially my wife, knows I don't speak French, the outlying chateau of Petit Trianon.
That works. That sounded good. That's how I would have done it. Petit Trianon.
Petit Trianon led them to believe they slipped back in time to the last days of the monarchy, slightly before the French Revolution. They described encountering several people who appeared to be dressed for the 1780s, including some gardeners and maids who appeared to be working in a functional way, out doing the actual gardening. They also spotted an ugly, pockmarked man sitting in a garden kiosk in very fine clothes, who seemed to leer at them menacingly. Another younger man, whom they had some difficulty understanding because of an accent, in fact, they described it as a Spanish accent speaking French, helped direct them to the Petit Trianon. As they approached the squat rectangular chateau, Moberly saw a pretty woman in old-fashioned summer clothes sitting on the porch sketching. Jourdain, on the other hand, would later say that she did not see this woman, even though both ladies walked past her to enter the building. After a last encounter with a garbed, helpful male servant inside, things seemed to return to normal for the ladies, who caught a coach back to the main palace. Despite the odd events, the two did not really speak of the matter until nearly a week later. So that's something else we've encountered in some of these paranormal stories, is that paranormal apathy. It's like, it's odd, but we're not going to talk about it.
Right.
Okay. A week later, when Moberly asked her friend if she thought the Petit Trianon was haunted, Jourdain replied, yes. The ladies compared their recollections for some months after the trip. Although both agreed to some of the same events and the impression of visiting an earlier time, their memories did not fully reconcile. They also made some subsequent trips to Versailles, and they were struck by how the paths and buildings did not match their vivid memories of the walk.
Interesting.
The landscape itself seemed to have changed. They began to research Versailles and eventually identified the sketching woman as Marie Antoinette. And the evil, leering man as, let me try this again, the Comte de Vaudreuil, an infamous courtier. Moberly and Jourdain have received much criticism over the years.
Of course they did.
This I found was interesting because I've encountered this story over and over again, and it's always told as they went into the past, and this is all this. Their contemporaries, when they published the book, at the Society for Psychical Research, which was a British investigations group, believed there was no strange event at all. Merely the ladies' faulty memories as the cause, and they made no effort to look into the claim.
The Psychical Research Group said nothing to look at here.
The Society for Psychical Research, which was...
Is it too weird for them?
It was not... Apparently, well, it was either too weird for them or it was not weird enough. In fact, my sense of looking into this was that they thought it was not weird enough, that that there was no real evidence that the ladies had seen anything. I think partly the descriptions not matching up, the length of time between 1901 and 1911 when they reported it to the world. You know, they weren't going out. They did not go in 1901 to the Society of Psychical Research and say, "Hey, we just had this weird experience." So 10 years later, the psychical research people say,
right. How do we even approach this other than just interrogating you? And separately and together, you know,
the perennial problem. This is not reproducible.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
as my friend discovered that.
Well, at least is capturing and gathering it as a story.
Right, but that had been done. A 1957 critique by Lucille Iremonger, there's a name for this, engaged in it had homonym attacks on the women.
Oh, of course.
Her entire critique basically can be summarized as saying they were engaged in a lesbian affair, and the experience was a folie à deux. Another French butchering, I'm sure, which is a shared hallucination. That is a known psychological phenomenon, although I understand there are some criticisms about the existence of whether or not a folie à deux can really happen. Another suggestion is that the ladies stumbled into a period fancy dress party sponsored by French poet and eccentric Robert de Montesquieu, although no explanation is provided for why the partygoers would be engaged in gardening. Because that's the description is that most of the people that the ladies saw were engaged in actual physical labor on the gardens of Versailles. So it seemed odd to me. There have been other researchers who have supported their account, noting how other tourists have produced many other similar ghostly or out-of-time experiences of comparable description around the environs of Versailles.
Yeah, I mean, if in history this was the only account ever, right, and across 200 years of us capturing stories, two people come forward with, mismatching accounts. It's been 10 years since their experience, and they try and pass this to people and say, I really had this experience, and there was literally nothing to show it against. I could see saying, folly, this is, they're attention seeking, but it's just that this is not irregular. It's not irregular. And then to debunk it,
it's
and
more
to zoom in on it and to debunk it, it's and to say they could have entered a party where people are dressed up. They could be making this. And so yes, that's all true. That's all true.
I should say that
except
that
there
Robert...
are literally thousands of other stories, spoken and unspoken, where you're ignoring that if you were to reduce it to a single story.
Well, they're not just making up wholesale the fact that Robert de Montesquieu actually held these parties, because he had an estate. No,
I get that.
He did have an estate that bordered Versailles grounds and have these parties. That's why they're hanging their hat on that. But there's no evidence.
No, I get that. I get that. There are very good explanations where you could say if people were making things up or if they, right? It's just that you can't, in the face of the thousands of other stories where people are coming forward with varying size stories of effects.
This story may be more elaborate.
It's elaborate. It's one of those majorly impactful ones.
Yeah, and I just
that are
hit
hard to
points.
Swallow.
They wrote a whole book. They describe the whole
right.
journey. They describe all the people that they met in great detail.
Yeah.
They're convinced that the clothing was not a costume, but actual garb of the 1780s.
Right. And it's hard to swallow.
But there are plenty of other people who do report various kinds of paranormal experiences around Versailles and the grounds of Versailles.
Mm-hmm. And even on a small scale.
Yes.
On a small scale.
So, this may be one end of a spectrum, but
exactly.
It's not out of the bounds of the stories that are associated with the place.
Yeah, no, I agree. And for people that are just coming to this cold, hey, did you know that Versailles has these weird stories and people wander around for like 10 minutes and interact with the actual Marie Antoinette as far as they're concerned, right?
Yeah.
Your average person is like, that's a bunch of bullshit.
And I also, when you look at the criticisms here, particularly Lucille Ironmonger's, where it's just an attack on the two women, and
Exactly.
and it's so,
it's hateful.
yeah, that's not going to be something I can go along with either.
This is when I have a hard time when I'm doing research for the show, just in general. These topics are hard. They're hard for the average person to apprehend, but you definitely have that class of person that's out there, and it again just doesn't attack just the story itself or the validity or to look and poke holes at it, but they go after the people, which is completely unfair, and again hateful. Ironmonger. I love that.
Yeah, I was like,
that's perfect.
You're
living out your name.
That name's perfect for this person. Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad you pointed that out, John.
Sure, we could poke at that story, but I'm not gonna at the moment. In fact, I'd like to move on to the next category of stories.
Let's move on, but okay. I would like to pin something, and
sure.
so that you can pull it in when you're ready. There are other stories that are just more mundane that I would like to share.
Oh,
just to show.
Do you want to drop an example now, and just before we move on, rather than come back later?
I can. Let me just real quickly.
Maybe just one. We can come.
Yeah,
we can circle
one.
back.
I mean, these are so mundane. Yeah, let me just very quickly run through this. Okay, and this is just somebody dropped a note on an article out on the web. My first paranormal experience happened in February 1992. My bedroom is located on the first floor at the front of my house in Sandyford Road, Newcastle upon Tyne. Previous owners had used this large room as the lounge living room, but I decided to make it my bedroom and have the lounge in the room below on the ground floor. So this is England, right? First floor is the second floor, ground floor is ground floor. Mm-hmm. Late one evening, after working hard on a major project, I went to my bedroom, undressed, and got into bed. As I sat in bed, still awake, I had a strange experience. It was as if I was looking back in time to an earlier scene in that room. A time slip? A grainy black and white film is all I can describe what I saw, with 2, possibly 3 people standing in front of me. The figure standing immediately in front of me was a middle-aged man who had a beard. Off to my left was 1, possibly 2 women. I remember the man was smiling. Unfortunately, I can't remember much about the women or the woman. After less than 20 seconds, the vision, film, glimpse of the past ended and it disappeared. It was rather disconcerting, and I wondered whether I had been hallucinating, but it was so vivid that I don't think this was a creation of my mind. So there's one that happens in a few seconds.
Right.
Peering into another space, sees something apparently out of time. There's this weird film over her eyes. There's this, as if, glancing through some membrane or whatever. But then she says it's disconcerting. So that picks apart that feeling of strange, that Oz effect or that whatever strange effect. So anyway, very mundane. Very mundane in an old house.
So that mundane experience being part of a time slip is a good segue to the next category that I want to talk about. And I don't have a specific story here. I found one, and then the more I looked at the example, the more this specific example fell apart. But this is a story category that does pop up all the time. Travelers who visit a roadside restaurant or diner only to encounter a scene that's somehow out of time, such as the 1940s, 50s, or 60s, which they find so charming that on the next trip through the area, they specifically search out the restaurant only to find nothing or an abandoned shell. I've encountered similar stories about fandom diners on other podcasts that rely upon listeners to submit their personal stories. So this is out there. And like I said, I found the perfect example of such a story from a visitor to New York City named Sebastian Rains 73. That was the username on the website Your Ghost Stories. And like I said, it may have been too perfect as the comments were relentless in debunking the
of course they
details
were.
supporting the story.
Yeah.
And users were upset that this was posted in the true stories section of the website, which is a problem. When you're encountering these things online, is that sometimes people will put fiction into the true stories and true stories into the fiction. But
Yeah.
regarding the Phantom Diner phenomenon, commenter Miracles 51031 explained, it's not that we don't believe places like this exist or that people have experienced them. It's the author of this story we didn't believe. There are actually several other stories on this site that are completely and without question believed.
Okay, so what was the difference in your mind
It was
between these
between
two?
the stories.
Yeah.
I think in this case, it was because it was set in New York City and in a particular neighborhood, and they gave such specific details about where this place was located. It was very easy for some of the folks, and it was clear that folks had gone in and done literal research.
Okay, so you're saying
both
that
on
in
the address and
Yeah.
the history of that address to say
Okay.
there was never anything like that at this location, and there's
Okay.
nothing like that now. And that the time that you're telling us you visited, it was not the rundown, sketchy area of town you're describing. So they were able to poke those kinds of holes at the story. But that's about the specific story. This kind of story does appear over and over again in paranormal phenomenon, particularly on long road trips out west. People are driving down the highway and they're getting hungry and they pull in someplace. And there's a specific story I'm thinking of that I want to come back to when I read the next section of the script.
Yeah, okay. I'm just kind of stuck on this spot, this place, this little corner of the internet where these people talk.
Yeah.
And it sounds like these are investigators that will take these stories and pick them apart
Yeah.
using the actual history and calling out lies as opposed to those they believe. But and so they make distinctions based on their own.
Well, the internet's the internet.
Well, I
wouldn't get too hung up on that.
I'm not hung up on it.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is it's interesting to me that the people are being able to discern the truthfulness from the lies.
Yeah.
Which I just find interesting. That's
Right.
all.
Yeah. So the point again, I want to talk about how these time slip stories do butt up against other paranormal phenomena and make us question what exactly is going on. The Phantom Diner story is sometimes considered related to alien abductions. The idea being that the memory of stopping at a roadside diner is actually planted by the alien abductors to account for the missing time.
Okay. Yeah.
And in this case, the out of time details are some artifact of the screen memory process used by the aliens, who may not have updated their script, as it
Wow.
were.
Okay.
That's
wow.
why.
That's a big door you cracked open.
Well,
there.
yeah, but the stories are often, that the folks encountered a diner where the prices are 1960s or 70s. The waitresses and wait staff and
No, I totally
chefs
understand. I've
are
run
all
across
in the
those.
Same, yeah.
I've run across those in the abduction stories, and
Yeah, there is an alien abduction story where this specific screen memory is mentioned, and it was one of the, I don't have it down in front of me. The Astonishing Legends podcast has had the same alien abduction survivor experiencer on a couple of times, and on the second or third show they had him on, he talked about people who gave the story about how they pulled into what looked to them like one of the old roadside diners, drive-ins, where the waiters or waitresses would come out to you at your car kind of thing.
On roller skates,
Right.
maybe.
But when that's the image. But I don't know that there were roller skates, but that was the image.
you.
It was
Yeah.
it was a drive-in. But when they started scratching that surface memory, when they went to get regressed by the hypnotists and whatnot, when
It breaks down,
when this
maybe.
person began to talk about, what they begin to recall is more like a craft sitting on feet, stilts, landing gear of some sort, and that they pulled in underneath it, and that is that. So the fact that this phenomena begin to overlap is what's really of interest to me.
Yeah, no, it
And
is,
it-
and this is again just to go back to that categorization. I say that's a big door to crack open
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you
it
can go
is.
home. I mean, that's just the abduction rabbit hole, which is not a hole. It's a massive crater in the ground.
But there's often
Not a rabbit hole.
we talked about how time slips are distinct from missing time.
yeah. No, I
or
think
time dilation.
good to use
but
these as a juxtaposition.
They are all in the same category of time effect in
Well,
paranormal,
and
and missing time and time dilation are both things that are often associated
Yeah.
with the alien abduction phenomenon.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at this, these are all a function of the same physical science that we're just not familiar with yet, but the experiencer is getting a different flavor depending on what it is they're running up against.
Yeah.
I will also add here, since you opened the door to sort of the script as applied to the victim, we'll just call them the victim or the abductee.
The abductee.
Right? Like
The experiencer.
the experiencer is placed back in their environment. We're going to give them a planted memory. Again, just for folks, this is what I was referring to when we say the being not comfortable talking about it is an effect placed upon a person upon coming out of the experience. I'm not explaining it very well, again, because it's very hard to explain.
Yeah.
That the apathy that you said is a psychological self-defense mechanism. I was trying to posit before in our last conversation that it's an effect applied to the abductee. Like, you're not going to talk about it. Not only I'm going to plant a memory, I'm also putting an effect upon you where you do not want to talk about it.
Yeah, well,
See what I mean?
and it's easier if you have this sort of odd memory that you can't quite explain well.
Right.
Are you more or less willing to talk about
I
it?
totally get it.
Some people
And-
are more. Most people, I think, are less. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I went to this like '60s themed diner, and here's the other thing. So, I sort of make light of the idea that in the script that the script hasn't been updated by
Right.
the alien.
Right.
But if you travel light years to get here in the blink of an eye, basically, and what is the difference
Well,
between?
let's
what is the
face it.
difference between the
You've got
1960s and the
a huge-
1980s?
You've got your clipboard. You're
Yeah.
a gray alien. You've got 900 abductions to make.
All these people look the same.
You're putting
to you.
them back in time. You forget. It's like, was this guy from the 50s or the 80s? I don't know. Just throw him in there. Put something in
Right.
there.
But the ultimate effect is it's silly sounding, but it's true. Why?
Well-
What difference does it make to the outside alien? I mean, if they're alien, it's alien to
and
them.
at the end of the day, they
don't know
they don't
fashion.
care. They're like,
Right. They-
give him a memory.
Yeah,
just block the ship.
Because the ultimate effect would be that the experiencer is going to walk away with, well, the time is accounted for in my head. That's a little odd.
That's a weird
But
memory
are they gonna-
I have.
what they're most likely to say to the next person is, I had such a great deal
Right.
at that diner back on
Well,
Route 66.
If you think about it, John, adding a memory that is absurd is even better than giving them one that's semi-plausible.
Right.
Right? Like, oh, I stepped off and I sat on this log for 3 hours and didn't move,
right. So
listening to crickets.
So let me pivot. There is another possibility here. It's also worth mentioning that the Phantom Diner stories are akin to older tales of people swept into the fairy realm to be wined and dined, which was a huge
Right.
feature of those.
Yeah.
Fairy stories that also, not incidentally, frequently feature a strange passage of time for the travelers when they return. These things... alien abductions are often talked about as being an update to the fairy realm story, but that's another way to. What do you tell? Oh, yeah, yes.
This is I've been meaning to buy that book and read it.
Yep.
I just typed in there that this is a pin for Passage to Magonia.
I
by
don't have
Jacques
that book
Vallée.
either.
Talk about a French guy.
It's
Jacques Vallée.
Vallée. That one I can say.
Yeah, because you've heard it a million times.
It's fascinating to me how as we go through these things, it's like I have huge gaps in my knowledge. I remember reading parts of Passage to Magonia from the library years ago, but I don't have it in my library at home, so I need to pick that up myself.
Well, and not to spoil it, but this is basically Jacques Vallée trying to explain these experiences by saying that they actually will morph through time depending on the time period that we're experiencing these. So back in the Middle Ages, you're going to have fairies and
Monks dressed in black rather
Right.
than men in black.
Or
Yeah.
even it's purported that the garb of a jester is actually an image pulled from DMT experiences. That the image of the jester with the horns, the bells, the colors,
I could-
sort of the what do they call that?
I can sort of.
They said that this is
Appreciate
actually
that, yeah.
imagery that comes from shamanistic visions.
Sure,
Brought
yeah.
brought into
Yeah.
common use. But we'll look into that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to read that and bring that in and start quoting on that because that's important culturally. I think it's important to
Yes.
talk about Valet's work there.
And I
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is the kind of conversation that fascinates me, where all these things begin to converge, and you have to say, okay, even if I'm a skeptic, and I am, and I don't believe the specific thing.
You didn't need to say that.
Well, but the confluence of it does suggest that there's something else going on culturally, psychologically, whatever, that needs to be poked at and explored a bit more. And that's where I find fascinating. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's the Phantom Diner category. Whew. Finally, and it's not really finally.
No,
there
it's
is
not
the-
even
but
close
this-
to finally.
Yeah, there is the account of the late Ivan T. Sanderson, noted Scottish biologist and cryptozoologist, which he relates in his book More Things, 1969. Sanderson's experience occurred to him, his wife, and his assistant, Frederick Alsop, while on a scientific survey in Haiti. And I believe this was a biology survey. It was not a cryptozoological expedition. The three were driving back from the field one evening when their car became mired in the mud. The three abandoned the vehicle and decided to walk into town, even though this would likely take all night. They briefly encountered an American doctor on his way to an urgent call who could not stop to help them now, but promised to look for them on his return. Somewhat discouraged, the trio continued to slog on through the dark. Here's Sanderson's own account. I thought you might read this.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Give my voice a break.
Yeah. Suddenly, on looking up from the dusty ground, I perceived absolutely clearly in the now brilliant moonlight, and casting shadows appropriate to their positions, 3-storied houses of various shapes and sizes lining both sides of the road. 3 houses hung out over the road, which suddenly appeared to be muddy with patches of large cobblestones. The houses were of, I would say, about the Elizabethan period of England, but for some reason I knew they were in Paris. They had bent roofs, gables, timbered porticos with some dormer windows with tiny leaded panes. Here and there were dull, reddish lights burning behind them, as if from candles. There were iron frames hanging from timbers, jutting from some houses, and they were all saying together as if in a wind, but there was not the faintest movement of air about us. I was marveling at this and looking about me when my wife came to a dead stop and gave a gasp. I ran smack into her. Then she went speechless for a time while I begged to know what was wrong. Finally, she took my hand and, pointing, described exactly what I was seeing, at which point I became speechless. She said, "How did we get to Paris 500 years ago?" We stood marveling at what we apparently both saw now, picking out individual items and pointing, questioning each other as to details and so forth. Curiously, we found ourselves swaying back and forth between the very Curiously, we found ourselves swaying back and forth and began to feel very weak, and so I called out to Fred, whose white shirt was fast disappearing ahead. I don't remember what happened then, but we tried to run towards him, and feeling dizzy, sat down on what we were convinced was a tall, rough curbstone. Fred came running back, asking what was wrong, but at first we did not know what to say. He was the keeper of the cigarettes, and he sat down beside us and gave us each one. By the time the flame from his lighter had cleared from my eyes, so had 15th century Paris, and there was nothing before me but the endless and damned thorn bushes and cactus and bare earth. My wife also came back after looking into the flame. Fred had seen nothing.
Bravo. Bravo. Now I threw that to you hoping you'd caught the Scottish bit and tried to do that in your best Sean Connery. Do you want to give us a few lines?
I don't know.
But you did.
I don't know. What are you talking about?
Well, he was a Scottish cryptozoologist, and I thought you might read that in your best Sean Connery.
Oh,
no. You missed your opportunity.
Well,
no. It's okay.
I don't know. Maybe I'll edit it.
Maybe later.
Maybe I'll read it later.
Maybe. All right.
Suddenly, and looking up from the dusty ground, I perceived absolutely clearly in the now brilliant moonlight. That would
hurt.
No,
Okay.
no,
Let's.
My voice is still hurting from our hoy-toy-toy.
Hoy-toy.
And Jason Statham.
Yeah, Jason Statham. That's right. No, it's Jason Fitzgerald.
That's Jason Fitzgerald.
Okay,
Let's keep moving.
Let's move forward. Let's note that Sanderson's experience is somewhat different from the others we've encountered so far.
Let's do that.
His slip transferred him not only in time, but location on planet Earth, from Haiti to Paris, France.
Yeah, that's really significant, isn't it?
And he did not encounter any personalities from the place he visited, even though it was clear this was a very vivid experience for him.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we've defined time slip experiences.
Yeah.
We've given a few examples of the reported time slips.
Yeah. Let's take a break.
Let's take a break.
We'll take a break. All right, gang. We'll be right back.
All right, so are there any explanations for these events? Let's look in on establishment science first.
Oh,
let's just look there first. Let's look. I'm willing to go woo, but I want to work on establishment science first because there are some interesting things there.
Let's check in with scientism.
Yeah,
and see what that has for us.
Is time
the dogma
travel
of science?
Is time travel considered theoretically possible? Theoretically, there are some lines of inquiry that are promising, but we run into some issues about practicality. And the fact is, we have no hard evidence of time travelers visiting us from the future, which strongly suggests there are no practical solutions for time travel. But we're kind of talking about that time, that willful time machine induced travel here. So,
and I'm seeing where you're going with this,
Yeah.
and I read through this, and I despise this whole next section. I think it's just
that's fair.
It's just ridiculous.
Let
But
me
go
get
ahead.
there. Let me get there.
Go ahead.
The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, held a time travelers convention on May 7th, 2005. The convention was held at 2200 hours Eastern Daylight Time on May 7th, 2005. That would be May 8th, 0200 hours Universal Time, Zulu time, in the East Campus Courtyard and Walker Memorial at MIT. There, I've given you all the information you need should you be from the future and want to travel back to it. Although there were some 300 attendees, none of them proved to be from the future.
What?
That location is currently, and by contemporary measurements, 42.360007 degrees north latitude, 71.087870 degrees west longitude. I gave you even more specific measurements. In case you're hearing this in the future, want to attend and prove me wrong and Mike right. Okay,
So stupid.
Stephen Hawking
going.
also hosted
Very clever.
a time traveler party on 28 June 2009. He promoted the event only after it had occurred and also provided the address and coordinates of the event as the University of Cambridge at Gonville and Caius College on Trinity Street at 1200 Universal Time.
You're not going to read all those.
I'm not. I did it once.
Sake.
I did it once before. Again, no one showed. One might wonder why bother advertising at all. Well, time travel is so paradoxical when you start thinking about it, he likely just hedged his bets. As I mentioned before, of course, these events targeted intentional time travelers. This episode is about unintentional time travelers who seem to have no control about when and where they travel.
So it's curious why we included that at all. But okay, it's in there now.
It's just
and
if
I am
it-
the editor. I can go back in
could.
time and take that.
You could.
BS
That would be.
I won't, of course. I won't.
But
You wanted it in there, and that's fine.
I just, you know.
But seriously, here's the other
if
thing
it's-
too. I
if
tell
it's
you, if I
accidentally
had the time machine, I would not go back in time and hang out with MIT people, nor would I want to go see Stephen Hawking. I mean, much more interesting things. The other thing too is, I mean, if we want to play with these ideas, it would be also part of the lore or whatever to say by actually attending that,
Yes.
you're actually breaking rules that you shouldn't.
Yes.
So it's, again, I find it silly.
No, you are correct.
I find it silly.
It could well be that there's some paradox involved. That is an explanation, and it is even a logical explanation that the paradox would be.
It would have consequences.
would have serious
And
consequences.
there are other consequences that I want to talk about later
Okay.
too.
Let me talk about the next physics-based issue with all of this, which is not insurmountable per se. It's just interesting. One of the great problems associated with time travel, whether it's intentional or not, is that it is essentially bound up with the same problem of interstellar travel. And this occurred to me because in doing the research, I encountered that granddaddy of all paranormal media, the series In Search Of, which did exactly one episode on time travel titled Time and Space Travel. And the script of the show reminds us that deep space travel always involves some function of time. The starlight you see in the night sky today is actually how that star appeared in the past, based on how far away it is and how long it took that light to reach the Earth. Or the Einsteinian physics of a spaceship traveling near or at the speed of light, which creates a time dilation effect, which we've noted is related, meaning that time slows down in the experience of the spaceship crew. Perhaps a recent pop culture reference can help illustrate some other basic problems of why time travel must involve space travel. In Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, one of my favorite touchdowns, the Nazis
Knew this
kidnapped
was coming.
The Nazis kidnapped Dr. Jones, put him on their airplane, and planned to use the Dial of Destiny MacGuffin to calculate the position of a time portal in order to travel back to the 30s and enact their plan to change the course of World War II. Of course, that's what they would do. As they fly, Jones suddenly recalls that the dial uses landmarks that have been subject to the continental drift for some 2,000 plus years, thus throwing off those calculations. And of course, hilarity ensues when the Nazis realize they don't know where they're headed. However,
you've left us so much sitting there.
It's a little frivolous, but it just goes to show that
well, not just the Nazi
places move in time too. We think of places as being static. They're not. And
but you're dropping it like you're dropping the mic, like you're
no, not yet.
Okay,
not yet.
Because I'm like,
I will.
I think there's some massively fundamental misunderstandings of what we're talking about here.
Maybe this highlights the problem of time travel.
This is scientism in action. Keep going. This is what I find fascinating.
Everything.
This tells me so much about you.
Yes, but everything is constantly in motion through the cosmos. Everything. Nothing is precisely in the same place in the universe it was even a moment ago. We are not sitting still right now, even as we record this. You have been standing in the same place for the past hour. I have been sitting here in the same place for an hour, but we are not moving. We are not sitting still. We are hurtling through space on this planet. The continents move. The Earth rotates. The Earth orbits the sun. The solar system itself orbits the center of the Milky Way. The Milky Way galaxy moves through the universe. The universe is continuing to expand. To make matters worse, there's some evidence that the rates of movement in many of these processes are not necessarily constant. It may not simply be a case of opening a portal and stepping through to the same spot at some distant past time. Because you'd be stepping
understand.
into nothing.
I think everybody gets
Okay.
it. Folks, this is presuming that you have to be at the exact same space and time for it to happen.
Well,
but keep going.
okay.
This is the materialist point of view right here.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And
fine.
and some logical science fiction has attempted to deal with this, and the big example, of course, is the very prescient Doctor Who series. They resolve the problem by creating a time machine that is also a spaceship, the TARDIS. To travel back in time to a particular place on Earth, I must also travel back through space to where that place was at the time I want to visit.
In the fiction.
In reality.
In the fiction.
No, in reality. Because if we went back 10 years in this spot, it would be empty space because the Earth hasn't reached this spot yet.
Again, if you make the presumption that you have to go back to the same place for it to be moving back in time. Again, there's more than one way to look at this.
I mean, yeah.
There's more than one way to look at this.
I do wave my hand in a minute.
I mean, so basically, you're giving us a physical science lecture that no one would misunderstand, because what you're saying is apparent to us if you take the materialist point of view. But again, keep going. I know you've got your agenda, so go ahead.
On the other hand, time slips are often one of the suggested paranormal solutions for mysterious disappearances of the people, like we discussed in the Missing 411 episodes earlier this season. A true time slip would in fact be an elegant solution for the complete and utter disappearance of any evidence of the person. The time slip opens, the person or the car or airplane is sucked into the vast emptiness of the universal void that exists there now, in the space the Earth was or will be. We need to be aware of the fact that time slip stories are only going to be related by survivors. So, I mean, even if you just look at the physics, it does present a viable solution for some of the things we've already discussed this season. You're just looking.
I'm waiting for you. Keep going.
All right.
Keep going.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
I was like,
Okay.
I mean, you're
I'm just saying.
You're using Newtonian physics to describe something that's so well beyond Newtonian physics. And I'm not saying I understand it. I'm not being coy, like, I have the answers, give me 10 minutes. But I'm saying if you take these points of view, you're going to have these issues with it. But yet these things happen. And so it's like, okay, well, we have to come up with other ways to explain it. Or we have to call everybody that talks about these things liars and fools or whatever.
Okay. Well, I'm not. I'm just laying it out there.
I hear you. Okay. I hear you.
Trying to remember. This is the part I've changed a couple of times. So trying to remember where I'm going.
I think you've confused yourself.
No, I haven't confused myself. I know exactly what I'm saying is that time travel must necessarily involve space travel as well. But let's say time slips do occur, and for simplicity's sake, the phenomena manifestation is somehow tied to that immediate location. What explanations might be offered? One theory is that it is a parallel universe. And I think, again, our cultural touchstones, superhero movies have mainstreamed the multiverse theory enough we don't need to explain that much. There is a theory that every decision ever made creates an expanding network of consequences that each create a branching timeline. The idea in this instance is that some overlap occurs. It might also explain why people in motion are especially susceptible to experience a slip. Motion implies, for lack of a better term, an ongoing decision, or perhaps a cascade of micro decisions as you travel. The result is simply a glitch that subtly crosses you over into this alternate timeline. Okay. Yeah. There is also a stone tapes-like theory of residual energy causing a nexus at a location that some people might pass through to visit a particular moment in time. This might explain the Gettysburg College, Pennsylvania Hall situation. People cross that energy threshold and find themselves in the Civil War surgery. To some degree, it also offers an explanation for Moberly and Jourdain, who suggested that their first visit coincided with the anniversary of the last day of that the royal family spent at Versailles.
And it's an emanation that travels with the in your concept of the space and time being inextricably linked. That it's the emanations that are traveling with
I'm
the
actually
space.
leaving aside the space and time for the moment. That I'm saying
Gotcha.
that I'm
Okay.
actually buying into for this piece the idea that somehow that place is a nexus. That I am bound to that place
Gotcha.
as
Okay.
we know it,
Yeah.
as we typically experience it, rather than in this grand cosmological scheme that I laid out before. Wormholes are another popular theory. However, this is where I'm going to get back to that cosmological bit. You might be familiar with the ideas of wormholes associated with the interstellar travel. It is sometimes described as a shortcut across vast distances by punching a hole through the fabric of the universe. Because space travel is bound to time travel, there is some math that suggests a wormhole can equally punch through the fabric of time. Okay.
Or that, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I was,
If that hole is through both time and space, then we have a solution to how a person can pass through a portal in the here and now and appear in the then and there. While there is some math that suggests wormholes can spontaneously appear, the greatest problem with the explanation is that generally anything like a wormhole would require an immense amount of energy to punch that hole through space. And this is where we get back to the cosmological. How much energy? Probably more than the world's entire nuclear arsenal. If we accept the theory that black holes and corresponding white holes are natural wormholes, then we're talking the full energy of a star. And one of the interesting aspects of the time slip stories is that they tend to begin subtly. Nothing suggested of a sudden, localized, energy-intensive event. On the other hand,
so
there is stuff like the Tunguska episode from, 1909? There was exactly an immense expenditure of energy on the order of a nuclear event. So I mean, it's not like we don't have unexplained events of immense
but
expenditures
I think,
of nuclear energy.
but again, and my take on that is there's always it's the description of the event through mathematical models, which cannot explain but are only descriptions. And there's this need, like, well, where is this energy coming from in order to do these things? As I'm researching and looking through, other material for future events, I think the argument would be that the energy is literally all around us. That the energy is not something that has to be, some mechanical thing that is producing it. That it's energy that's pulled from the environment itself. But yeah. Anyway, keep going. I know you have directions you want to go. Keep going.
I do. I mean.
So how much energy? Okay, you're saying it's
talk
energetic.
People talk about how they just slipped over to the other side, and then they kind of move on with this little hand waving. I just want to point out some problems. That's all.
Well, problems to you.
Yeah, they are problems to me.
Problems to you.
They don't match up with our current understanding of physics. But notice I say our current understanding of physics.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying is, like, this is, again, in my viewpoint, this is a reductionist view that's saying, well, I have to generate this energy from something. And it takes that materialist view that, well, you don't have a nuclear reactor standing next to you to generate this energy. But again, if we look at the 0-point energy problem, that the 0-point energy solutions are to pull the energy from the actual environment itself, which is all around us. And so to me, I don't have any problem with some of these strange effects because the energy is it's inherent. It's not something that, I have to have the sun nearby with a cable plugged into the universal wall to generate this, like materialism does.
Okay.
So, that reductionist view.
The whole point here is to have this back and forth.
No, I absolutely.
Okay.
But this is why I find fascinating, because I'm looking at the write-up and I'm like, these are the approaches that leave us struggling usually if we try to cling too heavily to some of these older ideas.
Okay, so let's go back and remember Ivan T. Sanderson, our Scottish cryptozoologist and biologist. He developed a theory that certain spots on the Earth were susceptible to various paranormal phenomenon, everything from cryptids to ghosts to disappearances and time slips. He called them vile vortices, and he actually had them mapped out in a regular geometric pattern But I think
this is the vial vortices point to a map that overlays what John's talking about is a map that overlays the globe. And so they're supposed to appear in regular patterns, but it's probably a little less than regular.
But he developed this theory back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
So I mean, the paranormal theoretical field has also advanced too. And I think today we would call these window areas.
I like the idea of what he's talking about, because what he's done is he's tied these places to the planet itself. Now, just for the edification of folks listening, a vial vortices example would be the Devil's Triangle in Bermuda, the Bermuda Triangle. The other would be the Alaskan Triangle. Over in Japan, there's the Dragon Triangle.
Yeah.
There's different places across the globe that purportedly have, these events that happen where these, these time slip portals open more regularly than other places.
Yeah,
and
we're
it's
talking
not exclusively.
We're talking time slips today, but
time slips, but there could be a whole menagerie of effects that would happen there.
His point and others' points are that other paranormal phenomena are clustered around these spots. Again, not unlike our Missing 411 experiences, clusters around specific areas of interest. All right, finally, in the theories section is it ultimately some kind of psychic phenomenon? Mm-hmm. Maybe the experiencers aren't so much traveling back in time themselves, but rather mentally connecting directly to some person present in the past and seeing through their eyes. Yeah. Or perhaps they literally take over a person in the past and experience the moment as if they themselves were there. Another possibility is that it is not so much our physical bodies that traverse time, but rather our consciousness or ego personalities that travel back in time. Mm-hmm. This theory wouldn't require the same kinds of gross energy that a physical transference in time and space would require, but the actual mechanism here is left mysterious in some way.
This is more akin to the idea that the psyche or the brain is pulling from the biofield. There's lots of ways to call this, and it depends which one you're not going to roll your eyes at. But the biofield, the information field, it's also known as the Akasha or the Akashic Record, which is basically a psychic history book of literally everything, and it's in the field around us, and it's readily apparent or it's readily available to be pulled from if the circumstances are right. So it could be someone's meditative intention to pull something down, to say, I want to know, some future event. And this is where, if we were to go back up your script and start poking holes at some of the things that you laid out, and I realize you're just laying them out because we want to be thorough. But if you were to take time off the table or out of these equations, and that everything exists, every past, present, and future event exists everywhere, all the time, all at once, and there is no notion of time. Time is nothing but a means for us to be able to experience movement through time and space, so that we understand everything as 3D realized beings. That I could pull consciously from literally anything, the future or the past, and that I could psychically experience it. That was really way the hell out there. But again, these are theories that we're pulling in from different places and stitching them together. There you go.
If you want to start to talk about quantum entanglement,
right.
If you go far enough back in time, everything was condensed into a single point of the universe. So that means that everything is still entangled.
Provided you believe that the Big Bang is the model that we want to use. They're starting to poke holes in the Big Bang theory. But you're correct, right? Entanglement that is a good argument for the Big Bang, or some notion that everything was compressed, and that as the matter of the universe expands out, that it would be all entangled. Therefore, there is no obstacle for the attitude of one molecule to affect another instantaneously, regardless of distance. So anyway, yeah.
Guy. Good talk.
This
is exactly what I was hoping for, by the way. I am throwing this stuff out there, yes.
Because we're going to have to go and pave over some of these big, massive holes we're making here. We're each making arguments that are hard to, or we're each poking at information that's out there that's hard to really apprehend. And you know, a lot of these books arrayed before us here have some of these answers in them. So, or at least start to look at these answers. So anyway, you got more to do.
Just a little bit more. Okay, so I have to say, none of these traditional possible explanations leaves me very satisfied. But that's me. And if you do pull back a bit and look at the various examples and across the traditional explanations, some other possibilities emerge if you believe any of this at all. Could there be an outside agency at play dragging people back through time? The stories that overlap with alien abductions or fairy lore open the possibility that some other non-human intelligence with unknown, potentially trickster motives might be the cause. Maybe they're expending the energy that we don't know about. This theory isn't prominent in the existing literature, but the threat is there. Even if some outside intelligence isn't specifically the agent of the time slip, the fact that time slips seem to borrow features of other paranormal phenomena suggests that time slips aren't an entirely separate phenomena. We've discussed the possibility before that there is a paranormal unified field theory in which all of these experiences are ultimately the same thing. We like to think time is a river that flows powerfully and inexorably in one direction. Indeed, humans seem to be hardwired to think of time that way. Mm-hmm. But time slips don't seem to follow any consistent logic of science or even faith. That's why I said at the beginning that pondering the mystery of time slips is a fast track to a headache. They just don't make any sense. And yet, people report these experiences. Maybe that's why these stories are so fascinating. The complete lack of a logical explanation makes them just that more unsettling and frightening. It's all simply unknown.
Unknown. It's unknown.
Unknown.
All right.
Okay, so that was the end of the script.
Yeah.
What's left dangling that you will? What I really feel like that was the discussion I expected to have. I wanted to throw throw those things out there, see how you reacted. You reacted, and I don't have pushback against the other alternate point of view. I mean,
well, I know.
I don't deny people are experiencing these things.
Yeah. No, I know. I think I strongly react mostly to the materialist point of view, and again, I was mentioning before at the top of the episode that it was fascinating to watch you pull some of this out and grapple with it, because I know that when you originally gave me the script, I'm like,
it was huge.
It's like 9 pages.
This is still big. I mean, it's still something like 9 pages.
Well, believe it or not, we got through it in an hour and 17. If we ended it here, it would be a normal size episode, but we're not done yet.
Yeah,
we're not done yet.
No.
And there's a couple of other things that I wanted to pull in.
Sure.
First of all, I mean, just kind of going back to, the Newtonian physics, or our standard model, or you're checking in with mainstream science and scientism, as I like to call it. I think those are great places to start. But again, you have to me, it comes down to, okay, well, these are the experiences that people are having. Can we explain them with what we understand now? And if the answer is no, we can't. Okay, so if we can't explain them with the paradigms that we have now, that people are either lying, they're having mental, emotional issues, or there really is something there and there's something wrong with the paradigms. And so I'm not saying I have the answers. All I'm saying is, being wedded to some of these conceptions of the universe and to be sure that we have our understanding is dangerous to me. And I think it's funny. I was looking today, and I don't want to go too far into it, but there was a 4-minute video out that I was looking at today where the James Webb Space Telescope is peering farther and farther into basically the past.
As I described, by the time the light travels to us, we are looking at the past.
That's how we experience it.
Right.
And when we're looking into the universe, we think we have an expectation of what we're going to get back based on our current cosmological models. Mm-hmm. The first thing I'll point out is that before James Webb, the JWST went up, there was, and I'm going to get these numbers wrong, but
It's
I'm not
okay.
prepared for it.
It's
But
okay.
we'll just use
It's
some
okay.
numbers, and you just go with me for the concept and not the actual numbers. But I think the idea was that we believe the universe to be 20 billion years old.
Right.
Or just say 20.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
probably some other
we
number.
had-
but
we
just
had a
call
number
it 20.
that
There
we
was a
believed.
number. We'll call it 20 for the
Right.
sake. So then we sent up James Webb Space Telescope. We sent it to the Lagrange point, and we turned it on, and we go, it's actually 40.
Yes, that's how science works.
That's actually 40. But we were so certain. No, I understand how science works.
I know.
My posit is that science doesn't understand how science works. Scientism doesn't understand how science works. And so we were, just as an example,
If they
we
were
talking
so
about
certain of it, why would they bother sending the telescope up?
Well, what
'Cause
I'm
they,
saying
'cause they
is,
thought there were some
from
problems.
my point of view is,
They wanted
okay,
a
you have a
confirmation
number.
or an
No,
answer.
no.
Come
You
back.
misunderstand me.
Okay.
I know how science works.
Okay.
And I understand that, hey, we have a number,
Yeah.
but there are people that will defend that number. When you go out onto these forums, you see such certainty, and you see people tear down other people's theories in ways like we mentioned here. And that's why I love your script, because you pointed out the iremonger person, who the ad hominem attacks, right? Attacking the person and the theories, and calling something stupid before it's been given any light of day to examine.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, in my mind, again, remember, I'm coming from being a skeptic and taking on all of these opinions from other skeptics and saying, yeah, and yeah, and yeah, and then realizing that when I looked myself, wait a minute, I'm taking on that opinion, which is wrong in my view. So anyway, what I'm getting at is we sent up a telescope and we realized that we were off by half.
Right.
Now it's 40. So now they're looking out there and saying
Could be more.
It's probably going to, in my view, my worldview, I'll put out a theory or a hypothesis that says, and it's akin to this quote, wherever you look, the universe will put something.
Okay.
In other words, you're never going to get to the edge of the universe and go, doink, 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 there's the end of the universe. And look, if you peer through, you can see the mechanism that runs the entire universe. We found the edge of the machine. And so this is...
See, this is where you're hurting my head again.
That's
Go on,
right.
Go on.
And wait till we get-
you're hurting my head because just last weekend I was overhearing two people have a conversation about the simulation universe theory, and how they were saying that the simulation only needs to run whatever you're looking at at any given moment.
Yeah.
And also, but that also presupposes that the universe is running the simulation just for me because I'm the only person I can prove exists, ultimately speaking. And it's just like, that's head hurting inducing.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And what it really...
But you're bumping up against a similar idea that wherever we're looking in the universe, the universe will put something to satisfy me. Is essentially saying much the same thing as that simulation theory, that if wherever I look, that's what it needs to resolve. It doesn't have to waste any power on something else. Like, it does not need to create North Dakota for the two of us right now.
That's right.
We're not in North Dakota.
We're not in it.
Right.
But we are creating it in the same way that the people that are there are also creating it, because we have a conceptualization of it.
Yeah.
If we get in an airplane and fly there, we trust it'll be there, right? But just because, we're here now, it doesn't mean it's not there and being rendered for them. But, but who is
assuming they're there?
Well, assuming they're there. That's correct, right?
That's why I said ultimately the only person I can prove exists is me. I think therefore I am.
That's correct.
Despite the fact I've known you for years and years and years,
right.
Truly decades.
Yeah.
That you're like a brother to me.
Right.
That I cannot prove.
I exist.
That Dwayne Jones exists.
That's right. That's right, Jason.
That's right.
That's right, Jason. So Fitzgerald, moving along. No, you're right. And again, this is, and you've run across them. You're mentioning them, right? There are a lot of conceptualizations of the universe, and what I take exception to is the certainty that certain folks will approach this with.
Well, hopefully I didn't come across as 100% certain.
No,
I'm just trying to describe.
I'm pushing back on the theories.
Theoretical model that exists now.
Yeah.
And yes, I think there's. Yes, I know you know how science works, but I'm still going to say this because there's a larger audience.
That's right.
science is always trying to disprove itself. It's trying to push the boundary of what it thinks it knows today and proves that something else something else is true. But it tends to move in certain directions. That even the basic problem people have is that they hear theory and think theory means it's not true, that it's just an idea. Theory tends to be something that has been proven in science, is something that is proven to be true over multiple experiments that have pushed the boundary, that seem to continue to say that paradigm is accurate. It is not just a wild guess hypothesis. So when I say that when I discuss how the cosmos works, yes, obviously we have moved as a species through lots of different paradigms of the cosmos, from, well, the sun goes around the earth. Yeah. But and we've clearly proven that it's far more complicated than we ever imagined. So when you talk about sending up the Webb telescope, that's because the general theory is, well, we think it's about so many billions, trillions of years old, but we have every reason to believe that it's older, or that could be proven to be wrong.
I'm not sure that was the case. I mean, I think that
they're expecting something new to happen when they do that.
I think many are, but I think many are not.
No, I agree with you there too. I think people are very certain of things they have no reason to make.
John, you know what? People are messy. And,
people are messy.
History is messy. And I think that we have a spectrum of people out there. You and I both know how science works, but I also believe that there is words that get thrown around by a large portion of that scientific community that hold us back. Anybody that says settled science, don't trust them. Anybody that uses the word pseudoscientific, don't trust them. Don't trust them. And I know you do.
I'm not going to follow you that far.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's fine. Right. And that maybe one day your brain will flop over and you'll see suspicion for folks that say things like that, because it's never settled. It's never settled.
Well,
right? There is no such thing as pseudoscientific. There are theories that are awful. Yep. And there are theories that get reproduced again and again. But there are theories out there that we stand on that have very minimal experimentation to prove them.
Okay, maybe so. But I think most scientists are trying. I mean, for any scientist, overturning a paradigm would be career defining. So I guess I get bothered by the idea that scientists are so beholden to an existing theory that they're going to deliberately ignore or somehow push aside counter evidence. They wouldn't be a very good scientist. And it would also
exactly my point.
Yeah,
and you're very trusting because it happens in archaeology all the time. There is evidence on record that is dutifully ignored. It happens in all the sciences. As a matter of fact, this is coming up in this materialism versus idealism.
Well, I'm trying to set you up for that, by the way.
Yeah, no, I think you've done a great job, and I can't wait because I don't want to give too much away.
Is that the first episode of
season 3?
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
It's a lot to write because I find that I want to have a little bit more of the outer edges before I try and talk about.
So we're not sure where it's falling in season 3 yet, but it's in season 3.
Yeah, it's in there. And I'm not
That's good. I'll continue my work on the other
ocean.
Topics then.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to...
Snallygaster.
I don't want to...
Dudley Town.
We'll be able to explain the Snallygaster. I don't want to... We don't want to have too many head-hurting ones like 2 in a row.
No.
But we also want to be able to point back to some of these episodes and start pulling some threads together.
Well, I think this episode pulls some threads from season 2.
I think it does, and I think we've got a lot of
places
places to dig in. I'd like to return to the portals and the stargates and the wormholes a little bit more. I think we can pull in interesting stories that start to illustrate these. We ought to look at the bucketing that's done there. But before we lose track of it, the next episode on the paranormal consciousness study would be looking at that, really the foundations of the arguments that John and I are making and we're dancing around, which is, the materialistic view versus the idealistic view. And we'll explain all that, and we'll try and give you some sense of that before that, as that episode's kicks off here in season 3 at some point. Whew, covering a lot of ground. Where is there any place else you wanted to go?
Not
Check
really.
my notes real quick.
Not really.
I don't know if I want to bring this up here. We did mention the Mandela effect.
Yeah,
a little bit.
We have mentioned
And
the Mandela effect, and that would, I think that fits into this potentially as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially the idea that you're somehow moving over, switching a timeline. It's not
You're
just
switching
it's not
a
just
timeline,
it's not
but
just that
this
you've
is
gone
permanent.
back in time.
This
but
is the Mandela effect is describing misremembered points of misremembered histories, so that in
it's definitely of a piece. It's definitely of a piece in the sense that we binned time slip, missing time dilation, Mandela effect, all parts of the same
let me describe it
time
like this:
anomaly phenomena.
the time slip is a short-lived, random, unintentional step into a different timeline and then a return. Mm-hmm. Okay. The Mandela effect is
hopefully a return.
We only have the
returners.
Okay. Well, the ones we described.
Right.
That's true. Yeah. In the case of missing 411, they didn't return, or they didn't return in a cohesive fashion.
Right.
I'll just put it that way. But the Mandela effect, if I were to define it, it would be as if half of the population shifted in time and the other half didn't. In other words, half of the population, and again, I'm just going on a ratio where 50-50. Some people have an event,
right,
historical memory,
right, yeah,
and then the other half
who knows what
it
the actual
differently.
proportion is, but yes.
And so we'll do it real quick.
I mean, can you imagine what would have happened had Lee Harvey Oswald been successful?
Dwayne. Or Hitler was shot during World War I.
Yeah, that's right.
So there was I don't want to go too far in this, but there was a suggestion that sometime in 2009, and I think that's when CERN was turned on, the Large Hadron Collider was turned on in 2009. But it's sometime between 2009 and 2016 when a certain character from history, the young man named Max Lowen, was describing what happened at CERN. And he said, and there's a video out there, and most people, or some people might be familiar with it, and I'm not going to dive in because we're at an hour 30.
Okay.
But,
well, we said we'd go longer.
All right. Well, let me just mess with this here.
Finish this thought.
So he said, and this is a young kid, I think in the video that they show of him, he's 13 or 14, maybe even a little younger, but a very young kid who's super brilliant, said, CERN altered the weight of one electron and altered our reality, shifting us into a parallel universe. And he says, and I think some people experience it as the Mandela effect, or that's how it's experienced. And he said, that small little less than 1% of a change in our reality shifted us. And he said, but to us, that small little change is huge. And so we would very much notice if some of our common memories, like what the McDonald's logo looks like, if it were suddenly changed, would you find that odd? Would you notice it? And what do you know? People are noticing these strange differences between their memories and what now is our reality. Mm-hmm. Another good example is, and I have this one, I can tell you that I experienced this differently. The Fruit of the Loom logo on underwear.
With or without the cornucopia?
With or without the cornucopia. Now, I remember it specifically being on there. And others too. When I go into some of these forums and people are saying, like, the whole reason I know what a cornucopia is at all is because of that logo. And now you're telling me that it was never, ever a part of that logo? And people get very upset over it. Very upset because what they're finding out is that their memory is not serving them, or their memory has changed. Reality has changed. So again, where you fall on this, I can understand if you find it hard to believe.
The
but people
Berenstain
have
versus Berenstain Bears.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
One that I shared with another lifelong friend of mine. I texted him one day and I said, "Hey, do you remember the Moonraker movie?"
Right.
And I said, "The Swiss girl that saves Jaws from the wreckage.
Yeah.
Did she have braces or not?" And he responded in text. He's like, "I looked into this 10 years ago," and he said, "It made me mad and angry. I searched the internet far and wide, but our current reality that we're living in, she did not have braces." And of course, there's skeptical people and podcasts out there that'll explain to you why you're
and I'm not doing that
misremembering it.
now. Yeah, I'm just letting you run. I'm just letting you run with the examples because I don't want to anger anybody or go into another hour-long conversation.
Yeah,
but yeah,
depending on what you feel about it, it's like
there's no doubt that people have this frisson of memory about different things.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's easy, And
I have him about a few things. Like the Berenstain Bears bit, I remembered it one way.
Interesting, yeah.
But I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that at a certain age, I mean, not to debunk things. I just think, for me, in terms of something simple like the Berenstain Bears, is at a certain age, our memory is becoming cluttered, and we start to filter things out and forget about them, that they don't matter. Like, it doesn't matter
hearing
to
you
me.
say that.
It doesn't matter to me what the Berenstain Bears are spelled.
Well, it doesn't matter, except that it has a direct effect on, that and that little thing and everything else that we experience. Why are we experiencing this? And why are so many people misremembering it? It's not like it's just me. It's not like just me and like, "Oh, wait a minute. Didn't she have braces?" And everybody says, "No, Mike, you're just really misremembering it." It's again, like, on X, when someone says something stupid and some people agree and some people don't, they call that ratio, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, it's a 50-50 issue. Some people agree, some people don't. These memories are apparently 50-50, where you've got, out of 1 million people, 500,000 people are remembering it one way, and others are remembering it another. I find that significant.
I wonder if anybody has. I'm sure studies have been done on this.
I would love to see them.
I'm sure some studies.
I've only briefly looked at these, the examples.
I'm wondering if the studies show that the same group of people have the same sets, or if these are different overlapping circles on the Venn diagram, meaning we're all from different timelines.
Well, that's what we're talking about. And it could be shifting? It could also explain sort of the polarization that we experience in society across areas that we're not going to go into.
I know, but I think there it's for some reason we feel an absolute need to be right. Like even some of these examples you're bringing up, you're right. There's I could explain to you why the cornucopia and the history of this blah blah. Okay, I don't need to be that right about something that's that insignificant.
I'm glad you're saying that, because I don't either. I don't have an ego in this. Right. I am just pointing out the mysteries. I think some things that I've read make sense. And you know what? The things that make sense are the things that, like, mainstream society doesn't want to hear about. And we're going to cover in season 3 also. I've looked into this this new theory of the universe. I'm not going to say it right now because I don't want to. I don't want to.
Oh, if it's the one I think you're talking about, that one's one that's gonna.
It's gonna blow up.
I'm gonna sit here when we do that episode. I'm just gonna sit here and stare at you and go, I don't know what to say about this.
Well, and it's been my experience that, and again, this is why I left skepticism behind, is because I can't the areas where there are mystery have piled higher than what I see are facts in my mind, right? There is more unknown than there is known in my experience, and that after a while you have to wonder. Again, that's why I say I don't take anything off the table, and I don't pretend to know. I just hey, the purple rhinos run the universe. Okay. Okay. I can hold it in my mind.
I think I'd prefer them in some ways.
Well, maybe they do a better job.
Yeah.
But purple rhinoceroses run the universe, and it's like, okay, fine, whatever. I will look for evidence. I don't think I'm going to find a lot, but if I run into it, I'll attribute it to that theory. I don't have to tear it down. it will live or die by, just the experience that we have. If I never run across evidence for that, well, I can't let it live on in my brain. But again, these are weird things. The Mandela effect is a strange one. As are time slips, as are these other effects. But so we're gonna look at some episodes where we dive into these. I have in the backlog sort of that general, portals. Again, we've mentioned the portals, stargates, wormholes. What are they? And maybe we'll dig into an episode there. We'll certainly refer back to time slips. We're going to look at other theories of the universe and how it's created and how it perpetuates itself. We're certainly going to look at our paranormal consciousness study and start with that. Where are you on materialism versus idealism? Where do you stand, and what that means, and other interesting topics. So, John, did we ring this out or what?
Well,
it's a long one. That's right, Jason.
That was. I think that was a good way to spend the new year, the transition.
Yeah, we gave you a long episode.
Long episode to kind of chew on your off time while you're sitting there in your food coma, recovering from your revels of New Year's Eve or what have you. Mm-hmm. I think we've managed to, at this point in the season, and I'm not sure if this is the last episode or not. I think it is. We're doing these out of order. Pull back the veil on that a little bit.
There's one more, I think.
Okay. But, at this point in the season, it's good to start pulling some of the threads of things we've discussed previously together and show how they're going to spread back out into those other episodes you mentioned. So I think all in all, a productive episode.
Yeah, it was productive.
And like I said, conversation went exactly the way I thought. And the whole point, if we both agreed on everything, this would be very boring. So
yeah, it would be boring.
I don't mind throwing out one, the standard ideas.
The standard model.
Yeah, the standard model, if you will, to have some pushback. And, I hope you'll appreciate that if I push back a little bit from the standard model at the same time. But again, it's a paranormal show. We're supposed to discuss the weird.
Well, if we're going to move society,
the boundaries.
Yeah, if we're going to move society forward too and have new understanding, right? We can't be perpetually afraid to bring new ideas forward. But sometimes that's not always the case. People become afraid to come up with new ideas because of getting booted out of the herd, or made to feel oh man. I just another rabbit hole, and I know we were trying to wrap it up.
Oh, God.
No. We'll do it next time.
Okay,
I was just going to say
next time
next
on
time.
Into the Unknown with Dwayne and Jason.
Let's do that. Let's wrap this up. I won't open that door.
Okay. But you have to tell me when we get off the air.
Yeah, I absolutely will.
Okay.
Because we got to somehow figure out how to put it in the backlog, and we'll bring it to you, the wonderful listener. So Happy New Year to all of you out there. Thanks for hanging on.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And we will see you soon. Take care.
Bye.